Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and I have with me today Nick Gorham, he's a former state representative from Western Coventry and Foster.
And Gloucester.
Yes. And an attorney.
Yes.
And also a gentleman who, not too long ago, worked really hard to get separation of powers passed for Rhode Island. So he's been in the tough battles and won.
Yeah.
All right, and won.
People won. The people won.
The people won on that one.
Yeah.
That was a while back.
Yeah, that was 2004 that separation of powers went on the ballot. It passed by more than 70% once the voters were given a chance to vote on it.
Once they were given a chance, but it took forever and so much effort to get it on the ballot.
Yes.
Yeah, it shouldn't really take that long or be that hard to get good government in Rhode Island.
Shouldn't, but you do have to fight for it. There's no question about it. But I really believe perseverance is the name of the game, and it looks like, right now, Pat, there are some really good opportunities for the people of Rhode Island to get some profound change in the Constitution and in general.
Yeah, it only takes them getting engaged, right?
That's right.
They have to step up and get on Facebook and do the emails and the phone calls and buttonhole their representative and say they want it. It's something that when you did the separation of powers, I know there started to become a drumbeat in the community, and finally the Democrat leaders gave up.
Yes, they
surrendered.
Yes, with any type of change in Rhode Island. I've lived in Rhode Island all my life. I'm 54 years old. I've been watching politics for a little while in this state, and my observation is that there just comes this point where there's a critical mass where the people have just had enough, and it usually follows a crisis or an indictment or something like that, and people finally start getting behind a reform movement that matters. And I think we're at that point right now, quite frankly, after all the news about Gallison and all of his misdeeds with legislative grants and just legislative grants in general. And just the missteps that I think have been made by the governor's administration and the House Speaker. I think people really are suspect of their government, and they want to improve it. They want to see action.
They want to see action. They want it to be in their best interest, finally.
Yes.
Right? They've been kind of being taken advantage of for far too long. So I think they're just getting tired of it.
Yes.
Kind of bumping along at the bottom and paying through the teeth for it.
Yes. A lot of people who I have known a long time who are typically apolitical, believe it or not, I know a lot of people who are apolitical, but really they seem more engaged than ever. And that's just my own anecdotal observation, but it strikes me. People are really fed up in this state. And if you just listen to conversations around town and things like that, people, they really want to see change in Rhode Island, and they should. The state is not well run. It's a great place. It's a beautiful place, but it can be so much better if we just had a good government.
Yeah, and I'm just going to put a plug in here. One of the most effective tools for changing the way Rhode Island is coming up in November.
Well, it looks that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the election.
I'm talking about the election.
Well, that's certainly coming up in November.
Right. And right now is a time when good people who want to see something different happening in their communities or the state, they need to step forward and run as candidates, quite frankly.
Yes.
Put your name out there. There will be help for them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But unless you get like-minded people elected and good people who focus on the common good, it's not going to change.
No. One thing that is for certain, I spent 10 years in the House, like you mentioned. One thing it really struck me as soon as I became a member of the House, the power in Rhode Island is in the General Assembly. If you're unhappy with your form of government or just the way things are being run in this state in general, the place to change it is the General Assembly. There's just no question about it.
Yeah.
If you look at our Constitution, if you see the way the laws are made, if you see who's really running your town, it's the General Assembly. Even if you're not happy with with all the mandates that are imposed on towns, or just in general, government in general in Rhode Island, run for the General Assembly if you want to see change.
Run for the General Assembly. We pass so many laws that affect the municipalities and their
Yes.
ability to manage their budgets. If you're upset about property taxes, come to the General Assembly. You can help us there. But let's move on.
Sure.
We are looking at some ethics legislation.
Yes.
We have an ethics commission. Why do we need ethics legislation?
Well, there was a Supreme Court decision just a few years ago that said that members of the General Assembly are not subject to the Ethics Commission's edicts, rules, and regulations. They're not subject to the laws, in other words, of the Ethics Commission, which came as a shock to a lot of people, because I think most people understood and believed that when that was added to the Constitution, the Ethics Commission, after the 1986 Constitutional Convention, the last one that we had, I think a lot of people believed that legislators were subject to the Ethics
And
Commission.
should be.
And should be. But the Supreme Court kind of shocked everyone when they said, no, they're not, because of the speech and debate clause, which is really a clause that just says the things you do as a legislator cannot, on the floor of the House and so forth, can't be prosecuted or questioned. So
that means that if you vote for something that benefits you, or advocate for something that benefits you personally, it's okay.
Well, no, it's not okay. It's not okay at all. And there are criminal laws.
But it's not subject to ethics commission.
There are criminal laws that someone would violate if they start enriching themselves as a legislator. But the fact is, Pat, that the ethics laws don't apply to legislators. That's what the debate has been about ever since the Supreme Court made that decision I just talked about.
Okay.
And that's what we need to fix with a constitutional amendment.
Okay, and there was a whole spate of ethics commission rulings, I guess back when Billy Irons was there.
Yes.
And that kind of was why this was taken away from the ethics commission. There was more than Bill Irons. There was Martineau, who went to prison, and John Solona went to prison, and there were a couple of others, it seems to me. I don't have all their names.
Quite a parade.
It was a parade of people who were using their leadership positions or their elected positions to sidestep the ethics commission's authority.
Right.
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 And so Bill Irons, do you remember what the charges were against him?
I don't specifically remember. I know that he immediately resigned abruptly when he was president of the Senate, right around the time of the Solona indictment and so forth. Senator Solona, who was indicted. And he challenged what they call the jurisdiction, which is a fancy way of saying the power of the Ethics Commission to fine and otherwise regulate the behavior of legislators from doing things like enriching themselves as a legislator in the way that they vote. And like I said, to everyone's great surprise, when Senator Irons took that all the way to the Supreme Court, he had been charged with a number of transgressions where the Ethics Commission alleged you have enriched yourself in some pecuniary way. When he took it all the way to the Supreme Court agreed with Irons, who said, I'm not subject to the Ethics Commission. I don't have to do what they tell me to do. Their edicts do not apply to me. The Supreme Court said, you're right.
Well, I don't agree. And we're going to talk about that when we just come back.